You have to truly believe in the magic.
What's up, Magic fans? Welcome to Penny for Your Thoughts, Orlando Magic UK's weekly podcast. This is episode 99, being recorded on Friday, the 30th of September. We've got a really exciting episode for you this week. Shortly, we're going to be joined by Director of Digital Content for the Orlando Magic, Mr. Dan Savage, just to talk about Magic Media Day and his thoughts for the upcoming season. I'm joined by Mr. Mikey Clark. How are we, sir?
I was all right until a couple of minutes ago, and Gary informed us he's never watched Keenan and Kel after we were discussing the sad news that Coolio's passed away. Keenan and Kel, Gary, you've never watched Keenan and Kel?
Absolutely not. No, never heard of them until about 2 minutes ago. Why would I have?
You need to YouTube the theme song to the introduction of that program. It was iconic, shall we say, Mikey?
One of the best.
I must have been doing other things when Keenan and Kel was on, giving out age ranges here.
You're not that much older than us, mate.
Gary obviously doesn't love the orange soda, does he?
Love the orange signature.
And Gary, how are you, mate? You good, mate?
Great. I decided I'm not putting my heating on because I would like to have some money to spend in Orlando, but so hence the hoodie and the jacket. Apart from that, all good. How are you, mate?
I'm all right, mate. I'm good, thank you. So let's just get these plugs out of the way because we've got so much to get through today, and obviously we've got Dan to get on. So for merchandise, please shop the latest Orlando Magic gear at both NBA Store EU and Fanatics UK. The links will be in the description. Please add code MAGICUK10 at the checkout for 10% off your order. Or you can support us by heading to our online store, magicfansapparel.tmail.com, for some of our own merchandise. I don't know why Mikey's laughing. Again, the links will be in the description. I'm going to keep going because I'm not doing this again. And if you'd like to help support the podcast for free, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Orlando Magic UK. Even if you subscribe on another platform, it would really help us out in trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So, Mikey, you going to tell me why you were laughing?
I could just see Gary smirking, trying to hold back a laugh himself, and I was
going to say, if I go on and plenty of you subscribe, we can pay our heating bills in the UK. Like some inside jokes there. So if you're watching this from America or anywhere like that, the heating bills in Britain have gone through the roof astronomically. So just click on and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that would help us out.
There we go. Right,
Sorry.
Magic news. A lot to get through today. But first, before we press on with our beloved team, obviously with the news in Florida this week, Hurricane Ian was hitting the state. I just want to wish that all of our friends in the US are all okay, not affected too badly by the hurricane. And the thoughts have been with you guys this past week as we've been watching it all unfold on the television. So fingers crossed you're all okay. Moving on, Magic Media Day. Monday saw the Magic return to work for the Media Day. We got to see the likes of Paolo Banchero, Caleb Houston in their new Magic threads. We'll be speaking to Dan, as I've mentioned, a little bit later on, who was at the heart of the Media Day, just to get the inside scoop of what went down there. Before we, obviously we're going to mention a lot later with Dan, but one burning question I think that came out, guys, which Jeff Weltman commented on to open the Media Day on Monday, and that he said that Jonathan Isaac will not participate in full team practices and will be integrated slowly. Now, Weltman won't put a timetable on his return. Then subsequently, Isaac spoke to the media and told reporters that he's finally ready to start putting it all together and ramping it up. And that he can see light at the end of the tunnel. What do you think, Mikey? It seems like that both camps sort of have different views at the moment.
Yes and no. I think from Jeff Weltman and the Magic's perspective, JI's missed a good 2 years of playing time, and he spent the whole time rehabbing knee injuries and having setbacks in that time as well. And I think when they want him back, they want to make sure that he's back for good. They don't want to rush that. And I know it feels silly that he's been out for this long, and it's not a case of rushing him back just yet. I mean, you'd like to think he's had the whole off season to get himself ready for training camp. But obviously the Magic probably don't feel that he's quite ready to get into training camp and full contact and getting up and down the court 5-on-5. So that's from the Magic's perspective. I think for JI, I think he's feeling good. He said that, didn't he, in his interview? He's feeling as good as he has done in a long, long time. And if it was his decision, he'd be out there now. You can get it. He's obviously spent a long, long time on the sidelines. He wants to play. The Magic want him to play, but they want to make sure that he's ready to play. And he's ready to compete both in practice and when we get into games next week as well. There is a part of it where it does feel like the Magic are maybe holding him back a little bit and just making sure he's got a little bit more time to get himself up to speed. And I think we all fully expect that even when he does step on the floor and start playing games again, he's probably going to be on a minutes restriction of, I don't know, probably somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, a bit like we saw with Markel last year. So, it does feel like both camps are sort of at opposite ends, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the Magic and the coaching staff and the training staff's decision when JR is ready to put it all together and get back on the floor. I think obviously that conditioning is what needs to come up to speed now, up to the level it needs to be. But it's frustrating because you think we're so close to the season now. You'd like to think he would have been ready, but that's probably not going to be the case. I mean, so we just got to be a bit more patient.
Especially as last year, we were told he was close then, but obviously never got over the hump, so to speak. Obviously, Magic Twitter, after those sort of, reportings kind of leaked, people weren't happy, were they? People were like, all right, trade him, he's broken. That was kind of the knee-jerk reaction that we did get on social media, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it came from a John Hammond comment before preseason last year, wasn't it? That he didn't feel like JI was that far away. And I think it gave everybody a bit of a... And obviously things can happen in between that time as well, which they clearly did. Otherwise he would have been back on the floor. But I don't think the Magic want to put any unnecessarily pressure on JI to be ready when he probably isn't. So
yeah, no, fair enough. Another bit of NBA news, something was announced on Tuesday, I believe it was, is there's going to be one rule change. So beginning this season, there's going to be a heightened penalty. So essentially one free throw and possession for intentional fouls committed by defenders, which deprive the offensive team of a fast break opportunity. Any thoughts to this, Gary? Do you like this move?
I'm just waiting to see how it plays out. I think it's very much in place to maybe increase the entertainment value of the NBA because you're looking at the penalty there, especially with how the game is now. You could be looking at a 4-point play happening quite easily from that. So I think it's something that's probably going to suit fast break teams. It's going to maybe also suit teams who've got, either great passes and or great dunkers in the team where, you get your fast break dunk and it's a highlight reel, the type of thing that's going to bring young fans in. So I think from a spectacle, from a viewing point, the NBA is looking for that. They're also probably looking for just to increase the offensive output even more. And it's going to be interesting to see as teams pick up on that, whether you see players early on getting caught out and then as the season goes on, almost pulling out of that, because I think your reflex would be, if you've been playing the game of basketball most of your life, your reflex would be to foul a player on a fast break. And I think you'll see a bit of that early on, and then maybe it wane as the season goes on. But it's just a wait and see. But I think it's been made with the idea of entertainment and spectacle and the offensive team.
Yeah.
What do you think, G?
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, it might make teams not foul, so then we get more either dunks or fast break, highlight reels, so to speak. Like Gary's just mentioned, it's going to obviously benefit the teams that run and gun and are very aggressive on defense. So let's wait and see how it goes. But I kind of like it. How about you, mate?
I think this rule's long overdue. I know it's obviously a very different type of rule, but I think more than anything, I think this rule's going to take that as a fan watching the game, taking that frustration out of with using this rule. It's a bit like in football, where a player's offside, but the linesman doesn't put his flag up until about 10 seconds later, and then the play develops. And then eventually puts his flag up, and everybody puts their arms up in the air in frustration, thinking, "Why didn't you do that?" It's just that frustration watching the game, and I feel like hopefully this is going to eliminate that. I can't remember. I did see the stat on Twitter the other day. There was a massive amount of intentional fouls stopping fast breaks last season. I want to say it was something like 1,400. That's probably really under. I think it was a lot more than that, but the number of fouls like this last year was a lot, and if they can take that out of the game, hopefully that's going to make it a little bit more watchable.
Teams like the Hornets, if they'd had Miles Bridges still, that would have been like a real showcase for them, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But again, your Ja Morants and even a Zion now, where you could see the Pelicans being a pretty fast team, it's going to favour them. It's certainly been made, for the right decision, for the right reasons. Sorry.
Yeah. Chuma Okeke, or that's how we did used to know him, told reporters on Monday that he's been doing some research into his name and the proper pronunciation of his last name. So while he's originally gone by Okeke in the past, he's discovered that the actual pronunciation should be Okeke. So we're just going to need to remember this going forward. And we're probably going to have to memo Paul and just get him up to speed on this development. Sunday was like the worst day ever. Right? So I was just going to get to this Mark Albert. I'll just tell the story quickly. So Sunday, I had a day planned. I went to watch the Cardiff Devils play against the Guildford Flames down at Ice Arena, Wales. And then I was coming back home. I was going to watch Wales beat Poland. And then after the Welsh game against Poland, I was going to watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to beat the Green Bay Packers. 0-3. And then I found out that Markel Fultz gets injured. Couldn't have gone any worse. So anyway, I'll go back to... So Gary messaged us literally whilst I was at the ice hockey and said, Markel's injured. I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going out there in 3-4 weeks' time and I'm not even going to get to see my favourite player. So pitchforks will be out. So as I mentioned, Markel Fultz suffered a fracture in his big left toe. No surgery is required. He's been placed in a walking boot, and his return to play will depend on how he responds to rehabilitation treatment. The team announced that Fultz suffered the injury during a preseason workout on returning to Orlando, and imaging confirmed the fracture. However, on media day, Markel did advise that the injury occurred when he stubbed his toe at home. So, any thoughts on this, guys?
Well, I think we're in that position now where whenever you get an injury to Markel or GI, it's almost like the confirmation bias type thing hits in, where you're kind of like, oh, I knew that would happen. It's a small break, I think. It's not a muscle issue. It's not a ligament. It's not like an old injury. So it's unfortunate, and I would like to know what he stubbed his toe on. Like for me, it would be like I'm hoping it was going to the fridge to get a really healthy but tasty snack. But if it was just something really lame, I'm going to be disappointed. But at least it's not like an old injury. So there's the silver lining.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Mikey?
It's just disappointing, really, isn't it? With training camp. Well, we're in the middle of training camp. Preseason starts Monday. You think last year, what was it? Over 450 games missed through injury for the entire roster, and we've already got 3 players out to start this season, start preseason. It's not the best start, but I'm hoping. I think he was in pretty good spirits on media day.
He was, yeah.
And I am feeling hopeful that is it unrealistic to think he might even be ready for the first game of the season or the home opener?
I'm hoping so. Otherwise, Gary's boy Cole will be starting.
He'll be starting anyway.
He should be starting.
Rightly starting. If he's not starting, if you think the pitchforks is something you'd win, there'll be cars getting tipped over and everything outside of the ambulance.
Oh gosh. So last bit of Magic news. Obviously the Magic open preseason this week on Monday night in the US. So our 3 games by the time we've recorded our next podcast, which we're doing a week Saturday, which I believe is the 7th or the 8th. So the Magic open Tuesday. I say Tuesday, I meant Monday, but Tuesday in the UK, 1 a.m. at Memphis. Then we play the San Antonio Spurs Friday morning at 1 a.m., which is Thursday in the US, not to confuse anybody. And then we play the Dallas Mavericks, which is Friday in the US, Saturday morning, 1:30 in the UK. So there we go. Bit of Magic basketball to watch. So anyway, we're ready for Dan. So let's get Dan in. And now we're delighted to be joined by a friend of the show, a man who comes from a very long line of savages, Mr. Dan Savage. As we all know, is the director of digital content for the Orlando Magic. Dan, how's it going, mate? You good?
Doing good. We're just getting through this storm here in Orlando without power, but here at the practice facility got some. So it's a nice day to come into work. Got the air conditioning, got some TV. So it's definitely nice. I got to watch some great basketball. So, excited to get things going this season and excited for the first road trip, which is coming up in just a couple days.
Superb. Yeah. Well, one question I got to ask, you just mentioned there you didn't have electricity. How did you watch the Bengals game last night then?
It was funny. My in-laws live about 5 minutes away. They have a generator. And so they still weren't able to get internet, but we had a TV set up and we were streaming it over over cell service to the TV out in the backyard. And so it was an interesting setup, but we got it done. They're Dolphins fans. I'm a Bengals fan, so it was
amazing.
It was interesting over there, but it was nice to see the Bengals come away with a win.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you could wind up your colleague, Jacob Diamond, who is a big Dolphins fan, I know.
Yeah. We got Jacob on the equipment side, who's a big Dolphins fan. We got a number of people here, Dolphins fans. So gained some bragging rights in the office this week.
Good man. So obviously media day on Monday. Tell us about Monday. How good is it to be back with the guys? The atmosphere within the team and the camp. Just seems to be more of an expectation this season to, as Coach Mosley put it, level up.
No question. I always liken media day to like the first day of school. You get in there and you're seeing everybody. What have you been up to this summer? How's everything going? You see some people and you're like, whoa, you changed physically. They got considerably bigger or, what have you. So it's an exciting time in that regard. You really get to see everybody and find out what you've been reading about or seeing online and seeing how it's actually, transitioning. And then I compare that to the first day of camp, which is kind of like the first real day of class where you start getting into stuff. So it's a nice, interesting balance, but always love media day. There's always some good stories that come out of it. We saw some interesting headlines, as I'm sure you guys saw arise from that. And you really kind of set the tone for the year. That's where we got a little preview of that with the pod squad where Mosley talked about leveling up, but a lot of those themes carried over and were brought to the forefront on media day.
Dan, you're getting a good look at the Advent Health Training Centre. What's your thoughts about it? And is there a favourite thing in there that we might not know about that you've seen?
Oof, that's a good question. A lot of it's been documented. That's a really good question because there's so many aspects to it that it's almost like what don't you pick? Just coming into the court itself as a basketball lover is just amazing because it's such a big space, and everybody that's seen pictures of it or saw a video of the tour, when they come in and you see it for the first time, that was what media day was kind of a lot about, was people who've seen a lot of facilities and they come in here and they're just like, whoa, this is different. And it's really hard to gauge until you see it in person. And it is amazing. And the court's amazing. The size of the space of the facility is tremendous. Normally, when we were doing interviews over at the old arena practice court, it'd be tight. At points, you're like watching your back to make sure you don't get hit by a basketball while you're doing an interview. That is not a problem here. There's so much space. It feels like you have to, sprint to make it all the way across. You have to do a good run so you get your steps in. There's I haven't tried it yet. I don't know if I'm even welcome to try it, but the kitchen and food setup that I have a view of from kind of where our communication office is just sensational. And it smells delicious. So I may try to sneak down there and take a plate after this interview's done.
Just put some gear on and just sneak along with a plate and see if anybody knows.
Yeah, exactly. I'll slap a hat on and maybe a jersey and see if nobody's the wiser.
Do it.
Oh, awesome. Well, Dan, obviously we've had Hurricane Ian, which has swept through Central Florida, and hopefully everyone's made it out the other side safely. Obviously, Fultz, Isaac, and Gary Harris have missed training camp through injury or rehabbing, and the Magic have cancelled a few days of practice because of the hurricane. How big a setback do you think that is in the first week? And is there any sort of adjustment plan that the coaching staff have got in place? Because obviously missing a couple of days is quite key this early on, isn't it?
No, that's a very timely question because that's exactly what we just discussed with Coach Mosley a couple of minutes ago. And I thought his approach was really interesting and spot on. His opinion was you can't make up time. And the more you try to force it, the more you run the risk of having that setback impede onto other days. So his outlook was really win the day, come out, make sure we have the best practice possible for this day, and really maximize the time. Now, obviously, there is a sense of urgency because they're going to be playing a game in a couple of days. They're going to be traveling Sunday to head to Memphis to play a basketball game on Monday. So I don't look for them to really do 2-a-days to try to ramp it up. They did a longer practice today, a one session. They're going to have a one session practice tomorrow. And then Sunday it'll be a travel day. So I assume it'll be a lighter practice, not, no room for 2-a-days. So I really think they're just going to look to maximize the practices they have rather than try to force more in.
Did the team do any sort of stuff like Zoom meetings or anything like that over the last couple of days?
Mostly it was just about focusing on staying safe. So they had a group text where coaches, staff members, and players were kind of all in it. And amongst that, they were just trying to make sure that everybody's family was safe. When you go through one of these hurricanes, power goes out, Wi-Fi goes out, even cell service in the area because the towers are affected and so many people have lost power that cell service gets really bad for a while. So there wasn't any of those obligations. It was more just, focus on making sure that you and your family are safe, have everything you need to get through the storm, and then we'll get back at things today, which, they were able to resume on Friday. midday and get a practice under their belt. And the energy was tremendous. I think everybody was just excited to get out of the house after being kind of confined for 24, 48 hour period and get back to basketball.
Yeah. Oh, fair play. That's really good to hear. Let's go back to talk about the team then. Obviously, media day. We saw the media scrum around Paolo Banchero, and it looked like everyone was really hanging on to every word he had to say back on Monday. What's impressed you with Paolo's responses? And do you think we'll start to get a bit more national attention now, what with him being the first overall pick this season?
We better, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The way I look at it is if the national media is not paying attention to this kid, then they're missing out, because he is a tremendous addition to this organization. From the moment he was drafted, he was a guy I had. I talked on, I think it was Twitter Spaces the night of the draft, and I just felt like the national media was missing the boat by not having him in the conversation for number one. So much was made about Jabari Smith and talking about Chet and, that debate. I really thought when I looked at my board, like how could you not have this guy number one? And especially when you consider what this Orlando Magic team needs, in my opinion, he's a perfect fit. So that was surprising to me early on. And then when he comes in and you see him in person, it's like, okay, this guy's even better than I thought, because his size is tremendous. You really feel it when you're around him, just how solid of a base he has and how he moves for his size. It's a really unique blend. He's out there, as big as Wendell Carter Jr., kind of moving like a guard. And it's really something to see. I think one of the players mentioned this yet, I don't think he even knows how powerful he is yet. And so that's the kind of intriguing thing that they could get out of him. Is I think he has a ton of room to grow. He's already impressive from his decision-making standpoint. I noticed that throughout Summer League training camp, when you're watching some of the practices and sessions and runs that they had, he was just making tremendous decisions, and even in those areas. And so his maturity for a rookie of his age, both with his question answering and his play, is just out of this world for a rookie. And, I think it goes back to Duke having to play a season under the shadow of this is Coach K's final year, and any game towards the end that they lose could be the final this or the final that, and having to weigh all that on their shoulders. I don't think there is a rookie that's come out in the last couple of years that's better prepared to handle the pressure of being a number one overall pick than Paolo Banchero.
Superb.
Speaking of sensational young players, then how impressed were you with what Franz Wagner did in Germany? And if you were looking and thinking still about leveling up, as Coach Mosley was saying, how do you think Franz can do that this season?
Yeah, just keep doing what he's doing, because it's working pretty well. The one thing, I think it was on this podcast, I remember coming on after his first summer league, and people were, saying, could they have taken this guy or that guy? It stood out to me from his first summer league practice, where Coach Mose was already using him as an example of how to properly do things, that this kid was special because of his decision-making, his basketball IQ, and the way he moves without the basketball. And I think that we've already seen him take some greater steps initially than were forecasted. For example, I think a lot of people thought within, my circle of talking to people, that he could eventually be a good ball handler and be a secondary playmaker. And I think it was a pleasant surprise that he was so good at it already in his rookie year, when the Magic were going through those COVID struggles in December, and had to place him in that role. So I think he showed that he's equipped to make some jumps even faster than maybe, I had even projected in his career. I thought that was a possibility, but he's already doing it at a high level. So for him, I think it's just continuing to shoot at the rate which he did in Eurobasket, which was a tremendous rate. If he could do that, continue to continue to make great decisions, he's going to have a phenomenal sophomore campaign. And I think the Orlando Magic are going to have a lot of success with a front court trio, perhaps, of Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr., and Franz Wagner. That's a lot of size and length that's going to create problems for other teams, especially when you consider the IQ of those three guys and they're willing to play make for others. I think that's really underrated. That's my big theme going into the season when I look at this team. I think the playmaking of those three as bigs, aside from the playmakers that they'll have in the backcourt, it is going to be such an asset for this team moving forward.
Just carrying on from that, Dan, there was a stat I was listening to earlier. I was listening to the Athletic NBA show podcast, and they were talking about why is this Orlando team's young core going so under the radar when you compare us to, say, the Pistons, the Thunder, or the Rockets, where they've all got their top guys in the draft the last couple of years. And they were basically saying that if you look at like the Pistons with Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart as their, say, big three from last year, the Rockets with Jalen Green and Sengun, I can't remember who the other one was. They all had a plus minus with the three of them on the floor at a time. Orlando, I think it was Cole Anthony, Wendell, and Franz in something like 1,100 minutes had a positive plus minus. And then if you factor into that, that's not including Jalen Suggs, who we used the 5th overall pick on, and you've got Paolo Banchero added into that. Why do you think this team's going so under the radar compared to those ones?
I don't know, but I like it. I actually think it, adds a chip onto this team's shoulder. It allows them to maybe sneak up on some people who aren't paying attention early in the season. So keep underestimating this Orlando Magic team. I like playing that kind of role because all of us here who watch the team closely know what this team could be. I mean, as you guys well know. And, you brought up that stat. There was the other stat where, how high they ranked in net rating for their starting lineup altogether early in the season before injuries kind of caught up to them. And that's without factoring in guys Markelle, who will come back, and Gary Harris, who I think is equipped to have a really solid campaign after rebounding midway through last season and really showing what he could do. So I think this team's got a lot of options, a lot of different interesting lineups that they could roll out depending on the competition night to night. So I'm really intrigued and excited about a lot of players on this Magic roster, and really excited to see the tone of Coach Mosley and other players holding each other accountable as they try to level up this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul and me were guests on the Ozone podcast a few weeks back, and the guys at Al and Anthony asked us, who do we think is the leader of this Orlando Magic team at the moment? So for a team that's lacking a huge veteran presence, who do you feel's got the biggest voice that when they speak everybody listens to? Who's that leader for the Magic at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that I think from a media perspective, we're going to have to pay close attention to as the season goes along. I don't know if there's necessarily a one guy yet. I think when you hear a lot of players talk, they reference Gary Harris, and I think it goes a lot to why he was brought back. Is he's got that presence. RJ Hampton talks about it a lot, both how he saw him do it in Denver and then brought him along here in Orlando. So I think he's got that mindset of, I've seen how an organization's turned things around before, and how we've gone from a team that was just knocking on the door to being a top seed in the Western Conference with Denver. And I think he sees the elements here of how Orlando could eventually do that as they could grow and mature. So he's one of those guys. The guy I'm really looking at too is Wendell Carter Jr. He had a few moments last season in that locker room when he spoke up. People listen. He's a physically imposing guy. He's got a loud voice. So I continue to look for him to do that. I think Markelle's growing into that role as he realizes when he talks, a lot of people do listen, and he's got great words of wisdom. He's been through so much. He's overcome obstacles. So I look for a lot of those guys to continue to grow in that role. I think Franz has all the elements to continue to grow to be a leader, especially when you look at his experiences in Eurobasket, having to play in so many meaningful games where every possession matters. So I think this year is really going to determine who those voices are. And I think right now it's going to be one of those things where you hear in different games, different guys kind of pull that role, and we'll see eventually who emerges as that consistent voice throughout the course of a year.
So, Dan, one question I've got for you is about Bol Bol. I've got a funny feeling he might get some minutes to start the season. It's just a little thought, but is there anything to that?
You know, your timing is really apropos with a few of these questions because we just got done talking with Wendell Carter Jr., Cole Anthony, Mose, and they ran some lineups today in some of their scrimmages sessions where it had Wendell, Bol Bol, and I'm trying to remember who the other big guy was.
Paolo?
Wendell, Bol Bol, and Paolo out there together. Yep, those were the three. And some Franz mixed in with that. So those were some really big lineups that they had rolled out together. And the interesting thing about Bol, Wendell was asked about this. They asked him, who is the best shooter between Bol, Wendell, and Paolo? And Wendell, without hesitation, said, as of right now, they're all three great shooters, but Bol Bol is the best because his size is so great. He can release and nobody could block it. And it's such a smooth, silky stroke. And, Cole alluded to one play too on the defensive end where Bamba caught it with what he felt was a lot of space, took his time, released a shot that normally nobody would be able to block. And Bol comes over and gets his hands on it at the last second and blocks it away. So Bol has these interesting elements to his game that are so unique. And his shooting ability allows you to play him with some other bigs that normally you'd factor into guys of that size and be like, well, that won't work. There's not enough shooting. That's not the case with Bol Bol out there. So I'm really intrigued to see how this training camp goes for him. Obviously, we're only 2 days in. It's early, but, early stock high on Bol Bol, I guess you could say, and just really intrigued to see how that follows out. He's going to be a fun guy to watch out for in the preseason because I think, it's all good in drills and camp, but, he hasn't played a lot of basketball in recent memory due to injury. So I think preseason is going to be really big for him to get those live game reps. And then we'll go from there to see, whether or not or how many minutes he could get this season.
Good stuff. Yeah. My next question was going to mention the Dolphins game last night, but we've already touched upon it. So I'm just going to pivot a little bit. Obviously, your Bengals, your love, your Cincinnati Bengals made the Super Bowl last season. What are your expectations this season then, Dan?
Well, there are some parallels between the jump the Bengals made and the Orlando Magic. When you look at the Bengals, they picked Joe Burrow first overall. And then they, followed that up the subsequent year with the 5th overall pick in Jamar Chase. And those two really catapulted the Bengals to a Super Bowl. You look at the Orlando Magic, they kind of did that in the reverse, having, the 5th pick in the drafting Jalen Suggs, also coming away with Franz Wagner in that same draft class, and then follow it up the next season with the number 1 overall pick in Paolo Banchero. So if you're looking for an optimistic connection between the two, you get the 1 and 5, and in this case, a 1, 5, and 8 pick. You really have the option to catapult yourselves to further heights, especially when you look at what those guys have already displayed in limited action. So hopefully we see that connection continue to grow and those parallels intertwine, because I wouldn't mind a finals appearance for the Orlando Magic in the near future. But when it comes to the Bengals, the way I look at it is postseason is a must. You have to follow it up after a Super Bowl year. You want to make the postseason. And then as this team shows, when you have Joe Burrow in clutch moments, anything's possible. So for me, it's just all about making the postseason, giving yourself that chance, and what you do from there will be in that guy's hands. And I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff. Let's not mention Mikey's Raiders. We often touch upon the NFL in our podcast, but
it's been a tough stretch since that loss to the Bengals. And,
I'm telling you, Dan, that's why I've been so quiet about this the whole time. You were clinging on for dear life at the end of that wild card game last year. But,
I was there, and I was. There's probably still my hand imprints into that seat from grabbing on tightly there, because I think everybody in that stadium felt that one potentially slipping away before that last second interception.
That's basically how our season's gone this year already.
Yes, it has. But I like a lot of the pieces the Raiders have. I think, it was one of those interesting things where they had success, but didn't necessarily carry the coaching staff over. And I think what that did was perhaps disrupt some of the momentum that they had rolling, and perhaps why they're getting off to a slower start. But obviously, I think the ingredients are there with Las Vegas. I almost slipped and said one of their pastimes, Las Vegas, to really make, a late season run. It's just going to be a question of, in a powerful AFC conference, will there be enough time for them to recover and make the postseason? Because I believe the statistics is for teams that start, 0-3 or have a rough start, that, only very few can make it to I think it's like 2% make the postseason. And then for, teams that have, one win through 3 weeks, it's like 20%. So, these games coming up are going to be really big for them.
Yeah. I mean, the silver lining is we've only lost by 1 score for all 3 games, and the rest of the AFC West aren't doing very well themselves either. So
that's true. Just got to win the division.
That's all we got to do. But I'm not so hopeful for that this year. But we'll see.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Dan, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us today. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time. We got the countdown on. I think some of us come over in about 3 weeks' time. Mike
Awesome.
and myself in about 3.5 weeks. So we shall hit you up once we're in Orlando, and hopefully we maybe get a beer or something there. So
or take a Gatorland visit, since I know you guys are so excited to be around them.
Let's get G on that zip line, Dan.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Have to bring one to the stadium if at the very least. Surprise him at his
God. Oh my God! Yeah. No, thank you for joining us, Dan. We really appreciate your time. So next week we'll be recording on Saturday, the 8th of October, which will be our 100th episode. So quite a milestone there for us since this started. Thank you very much. In lockdown some 2 years ago now. So thank you to everyone as always for listening and watching. Stay up to date with the latest Orlando Magic news by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Orlando Magic UK. Leave us your comments where you can. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all at Orlando Magic UK. So from Dan, Mikey, Gary, and myself, until next week, go Magic.